cyber intelligence, the newish frontier. A couple quick housekeeping announcements. On behalf of the Diana Initiative, I'd like to express gratitude for our Diamond, Platinum, and Gold sponsors, which is MongoDB, Microsoft, Verizon, Salesforce, Amazon Information Security, eLearn Security, Intel, and Remediant. And also just a quick reminder, please make sure to go to our closing keynote today at 4 p.m., which is 4 p.m. PST, on stage number 1, and join us in the networking area afterwards. Today's session is live, and the recording will be made available. We may have time for an open Q&A at the end, so please keep questions in mind. And I would like to welcome Yasmine, aka Yaz. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank everyone for coming. So as the title implies, I'm a hunter, and through this talk we're going to discover what that means and what I do. So yeah, if my mouse works, that is. There we go. So disclaimer, like others have done, these are my own views and opinions based on experience, and I don't represent anybody today. So let's get into why everybody hopefully came, and hopefully y'all are here to learn more about threat hunting. If not, then oops. But hopefully you'll walk away with a better understanding of threat hunters and threat hunting, which includes common types of hunters, what a threat hunter could add to incident response and prevention, skills a seasoned hunter might have and how they might help, common tools that hunters use, the method to our madness, why organizations should care about their threat space, and I'll give everyone some helpful learning tools and aids in the end, just in case y'all are interested. So first I'm going to do a small bio. Been tinkering around with web page vulnerabilities since I was like around 17. I started infecting my own systems with malware and spyware, just kind of see what happens. But I was young. I didn't think that those were actually real jobs that you could do. I didn't think you could make money from that kind of stuff. So I did what any normal teenager does, and I joined the military. And I joined as a signals and intelligence analyst. Yeah, I stayed in there from like 2003 to 2018. Did some targeting downrange, then came back. I am now at Fidelis as their senior threat researcher. So as you can kind of tell, my career grew up in the shadows of digital conversations. I love hunting. This is what I do. It's the bee's knees for me. Discovery of the unknown while I'm staying unknown is lots of fun. I had to learn weaknesses in my targets and how to exploit them. And sometimes, you know, during my career, I would spend so much time tracking my targets that I would know them better than my family, unfortunately. I was trained to become an expert in the area that I was assigned. Even as a contractor for Department of Defense, I was still sitting in the shadows, and a target is a target, and I had better had my facts straight because sometimes people's lives were depending on my ability to put that, you know, puzzle piece together and get these threats right. A network is a network, human or digital. In the shadows, it's all the same. So a little bit about my work life. I used to track Man 1 from their use of macros and their deployment of Hansator. I tracked targets that were really bad with OPSEC, and sometimes I would have too much information and I'd have to leave it out for my team. And sometimes I would find new actors and, you know, try to figure out who they are and what they're doing. So we're going to get in a little bit more into those examples of, you know, things I've done in my career. And we're going to start with macros. Something that people tend to notice about me, especially if I'm working on a malicious Word document, is that I find macros to be a lot of fun. And Man 1 was no exception with their use of macros and deploying Hansator. Hansator is a downloader that aims to put secondary malware on a victim system. And I would start by looking at API calls to get an idea of where things might be hiding. And you can hopefully see, I'm not too sure how small it is, but in this picture, you can see that this macro is checking to see what kind of operating system you're on. And you can also see that it'll probably be freeing up some space to possibly move code around via kernel 32 virtual alloc, which is an API call. So if we were taking this malware apart, we would locate that API call, we would put a breakpoint there, and we would go check it out. Yeah, this was like a really fun macro for me to take apart. It used XOR to hide the payload. It hollowed out some space in running explore exe, and then it injected the payload into the running process. It used a string, like a little Easter egg, POLA, POLA, as a marker in the binary, and this would tell us where the malicious binary was going to be sitting before it was actually injected into the running process. So little things like that for me were just exciting, like the little Easter eggs and watching it move code around and then going and carving out the payload before the payload is actually injected. Yeah, spent a lot of time doing that. A little fun. Anyways, let's move on to talking about some OPSEC fails, because I could talk about this macro all day long. Just kidding. We're gonna do a couple bonus slides here. All right. So these next 2 slides are going to be just a couple extra examples. This first one is a hunt that I was on, and it started out by me checking low-level alerts that might be a false positive, and I stumbled upon this little odd GET request. And I was like, okay, are they scanning us? What are they doing? You know, what's their goal here? Why am I seeing this low-level alert? So I went to our PCAP system and I looked up the information so that I could pull it all down and have the full conversation. Because when I started this hunt, I was just in like an endpoint logging system, so I only had like a little blurb of the alert, and I needed the whole conversation to get a better idea. So I pulled that down from our PCAP system. And I saw that right after the GET request was this POST request. And it was like right after, so this person was scanning us, they were sending their stuff, they were just all the things all at once. But they weren't done. It gets a little bit better. So this is just an example of what the alert looked like in Splunk. So if you have Splunk hooked up to your endpoint systems, or you have your data going in, this might be what you see if you get the alert as well. So you can see that the post path is put in there. Let's see if I can get my mouse over there. So right here, that's the bad stuff that was happening. All right. So in this attempt, they just kept going. They kept trying to, push everything all at once, like I mentioned, like all the things, do it all. And they ended up trying to upload a backdoor. They didn't wait around to see if they were getting an error response, because if they had, at least checked, they'd see that nothing was going through, but they didn't. So they tried to upload a backdoor to us. And we were able to, get the backdoor, analyze it and whatnot. They didn't get anywhere. I just wrote up an intrusion attempt report there and kind of moved on. This was like one incident out of many where this attacker kept trying this exact same intrusion attempt. So they didn't not just fail once, they failed a couple times. So as a hunter, that's like some of the fun stuff you can see. All right, this is an example of CoinHive. Again, I was looking through low-level alerts, and so that was like something I did every day at this position. I would come in the morning, I would get onto the endpoint system, all the log systems that we had, and I would go through low-level alerts, make sure that we didn't have any false positives or anything that really needed attention, that we might have not missed or might have not picked up with, or because it was marked as low, it wasn't given the right attention. Anyways, so that was just like a morning routine going through these things. All right. So I noticed this alert for the possible crypto miner infection, and I went and checked out the traffic again, but it was not a crypto, it was not an infection, crypto miner infection on a system. When I checked the traffic, I saw CoinHive fingerprints. So I was just like, oh, this is crypto hijacking and not a crypto infection. So the crypto mining code that CoinHive uses was placed on the website. And when the user clicked that site, they were unknowingly helping to mine for coins while they were visiting. But once you leave the site, you're no longer helping. So there's not much I can do. This was just an annoyance alert and not really anything to dig into. So it is still out there, still being annoying. I thought it was down for a little while because I was seeing less reports on the activity, but nope, CoinHive is still out there. This is an example of CoinHive and Splunk. So if you were going through alerts in Splunk, this is something you might see. And you can see that the path clearly says CoinHive. It says it's a JavaScript miner, it's Trojan. So yeah, just an example of the alert. All right, really, let's move on to OPSEC fails. There's no better OPSEC fail mentioned than hitting Cobra. If you have ever done research on hitting Cobra or North Korea, you'll know that they tend to have some good OPSEC fails. In fact, I think another threat intelligence analyst has made a whole PowerPoint presentation on nothing but North Korea OPSEC fails. So if you ever get bored and you want to go through those, look that up. All right. So this is just a small chart I put together on hitting Cobra during an analysis period that I had. Just a small one. As you can see, there's a lot of things here, a lot of things going on. So hitting Cobra was kind of easy for me to track just because they're known for like reusing code. They're known for just changing little bits and pieces and exploits and reusing exploits. They're known for leaving passwords in their malware. They're known for using Google Drive. They're known for leaving their Google Drive open. They're known for leaving passwords to that Google Drive in their malware. They also have been known to leave like test files in Google Drive that is, you know, they're just like, oh, does this malware actually work? Or, you know, here's some victim information we're just gonna leave out there in the open. Yeah, so it's pretty entertaining if you're a threat intelligence analyst going after hitting Cobra. They also have a unique operating system called Red Star. And so sometimes if you are monitoring your network logs, you might see a operating system called Red Star pinging you and scanning you, and that's North Korea. They don't really try to hide it. It's right out there in the open. Yeah, I like North Korea. They're one of my faves. All right, so sometimes as a cyber threat intelligence analyst, as a hunter, you will have too much information. It's just what happens. You have like so much and you need something to do with it. So one thing that I used to do at one of the places I worked is we had a SharePoint area, and I would create like little SharePoint areas, pages for my coworkers on information I thought was interesting, but didn't have time to get to. And so this is just one example. And I had found an information stealer. The code looked very similar to Hawkeye, but I wasn't 100% sure. So I just tried to, leave as much detail as I can without getting too into it. And, hopefully I would have a coworker come back and pick it up if they thought it was interesting as well. So I also use a OneNote. It's pretty good. Lots of tabs you can use, and then in the tabs, more tabs, and then you create as many notebooks as you want to. So I'm a hoarder of notebooks and tabs in OneNote, and it's easy to share with other analysts. So if I create a tab and I think, some other analyst needs this information, I can easily share that over. And if you use Teams, it can be integrated with Teams and even easier for sharing and keeping notes. Hashtag not sponsored. Okay, so now we're going to get into talking more about hunters and their roles after you've seen some examples of hunts that I was on, and you've seen a little bit of like my experience kind of summarized into a couple slides. We're going to talk about two common types of threat hunters, and I acknowledge that there might be hybrids of these roles or different, different and more variants of these roles here. So this is just big overview and based on experience. So the first type of hunter are those who hunt in endpoint management systems, Windows event logs, and large data collection systems. And these hunters typically sit in incident response teams on SOCs. They are looking for things that might have been missed. They are looking for known IOCs, indicators of compromise. They are looking for patterns that might indicate a possible intrusion or infection. Sometimes they might be looking for something they have recently heard about or read about, because they're hunters, so they're staying in the know. So they might have saw something on Twitter about a new ransomware or a new CVE or something along those lines, and they want to go check to make sure that their company is not affected, or hopefully not affected. These hunters might also use that data to create signatures like YARAs, SNORs, Seracata, and other types of, signatures to help beef up their company's security. These hunters can also help provide actionable intelligence when an incident happens. So let's say an incident goes down, there's a malware infection on somebody's computer. These hunters are able to know about that, malware. They're able to stay in the know, so they can help provide incident response with, hey, this is where you should look. This is the data that might have been exfiltrated. This is my recommendations on how, we might help it or prevent it in the future. So the next type of researcher are those that are not sitting in IR, threat researchers. These researchers, like I mentioned, are probably not in IR or in a SOC, and they're more likely to be found at a cybersecurity company, at a government agency, and of course, maybe in military. Some of these researchers might be assigned an area of operation or a threat space. They might also be researching based on organizational needs or researching based on their own interest. So some commonalities that these analysts have. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to double click. Both these researchers are hunting threats based on both these researchers are hunting threats based on gathered open source intelligence. And some of these researchers might have client data, they might have logs, endpoint systems, they might have big data. If they're in government areas, they're probably going to have a lot more data than, if you're in IR or if you're like sitting at a cybersecurity company. So the types of data and the amount of data might be different, but they'll still have lots of data to go through. They're both probably tracking malware evolution, APTs, TTPs, and new CVEs so that they can stay in the know. These are all things that common hunters do. And of course, both types of hunters and all hunters know that even a little vulnerability can be a dangerous thing. All right. These hunters also know their enemy's weakness. Their knowledge of their threat space gives them the upper hand. So we're going to talk about a little bit about why this is an important field. Imagine you're planning to go to war, and instead of using the data that you have on your enemy, which includes like historical data, patterns of behaviors, common TTPs, you just throw people at it. Well, this didn't work well for the Mother of Dragons. We know how that ended, and it doesn't work well for cyber threats. Her poor planning did nothing to stop the White Walkers. There was one person who understood the weakness of their enemy that was able to take down the threat. Arya. Arya essentially killed the chain of attack. She was a skilled hunter who understood and knew her threat space. And when dealing with many threats of all shapes and sizes, there's no one piece of software or magic button that's gonna just take care of it all. Being reactive instead of proactive can cost people time and money and data. So you might wonder, what does a hunter add to IR and prevention? Like I mentioned, a hunter is proactive. They're aiming to understand their threat space so well that they are staying one step ahead. They are considered breakers of chains. Having someone who understands and knows the changes in malicious campaigns, they know that what the newest ransomware is, new CVEs, they understand how the intrusion chain of attack works and what that looks like. They understand the infection chain malware uses and what that looks like. They understand how to create signatures, and they're able to discover undiscovered threats. That will no doubt help you move from being reactive to proactive. You always want to be proactive. All right, now that we're kind of getting a better idea of hunters, what they do, kind of where they fit in, what some of their hunting might look like, let's talk about their skills. This section is just kind of put together from my experiences, my lessons learned. It's not meant to be like, you know, you don't write this down and go by this. It's not the end all be all. All right. So I think above all, no matter what your hunter has and is bringing to the table, they need to have the ability to adapt. Threats are ever changing. Things are continuously coming out. You have 0 days. You have new ransomware, new malware, new actors. Things are always evolving in the cyberspace. And so your analyst has to be able to adapt and change as well. Not being able to adapt can be costly. All right, we're going to start with malware analysis. I think malware analysis is one of the more basic skills that we have here. And so yeah, we're just going to start with that. Your analyst needs to understand how malware behaves, both on the system and on the network. They can't hunt what they don't know. And while they might not be like code deep or assembly deep, they're still able to gain, a lot of information about the threat, about malware. That's always good. They don't have to be an expert to do malware analysis. This is kind of entry level here. I think it's pretty entry level. And this might be where some analysts are stepping into cyber intelligence, or this might be where an analyst is going into reverse engineering. So I really feel malware analysis is like that foundation. So there's always a chain of events, chain of infection, chain of intrusion, chain of attack, like always a chain of events, and your hunter is going to be able to help break these, and understanding that chain of infection, from a malware analysis point of view is very important, because you can't help what you don't know. All right. So another skill that's helpful to have, and I mentioned, is reverse engineering. Being able to take the things apart in order to know like how they work, how to protect against them, whether that is by making better rules, or if it's blocking, or if it's, taking it apart just to know IOCs. And being able to know those IOCs, indicators of compromise, can help you find other similar files. It can help you find other similar threats or possible infections on the network. And reverse engineering can sometimes lead to Easter eggs. Kind of like I mentioned in my earlier example, the little string marker Paola that led us to where the payload was going to be. Those little clues, they help. And they can also help to identify techniques that an attacker uses or a malware developer uses. So being able to get into the file deeper is definitely a good thing, and only furthers things better. And like I mentioned, reverse engineering can help find indicators of compromise. So doing malware analysis, files are often sent to things like sandboxes and whatnot, or auto behavior tools, and those tools might might not work. They might not get the IOCs. Your, your piece of malware or what you're working with, it might be aware, and because it's aware, it's not running in the environment like it should. And reverse engineering kind of takes that away and is able to allow the analysts to get things that were missed in behavior analysis and or by running in the sandbox. Yeah. All right, so let's move into the hacker mindset. There's no better way to getting into the hacker mindset than becoming one for a little while, even if it's for a short time. CEH courses are a great way to get inside, the head of a hacker. You go through these courses, you learn how to do penetration testing that puts you in the steps, that puts you in the know-how, gets that brain working, thinking, all good things. The analyst also learns networking on a deeper level. So it takes what you learned in malware analysis, bumps it up. Takes what you learned in reverse engineering, bumps it up. Gives you that, attacker mindset of the network and intrusions, and it puts you in the first hand in the driver's seats of being the intruder. They will also learn about exploits and vulnerabilities in the chain of attack. So all the information that you can learn from taking CEH courses will make you or make your analyst more prepared to hunt on endpoints and track bad actors, and it'll help them understand what a threat actor might go through to infect or attack a victim. So the more you can get inside how hackers do their thing, the more you're able to go and hunt against them. Boop. All right. So network analysis kind of plays off all the other skills. You'll be dealing with a lot of different network data, and so you need to be able to know how to learn to read PCAPs. And you need to understand how network traffic behaves, and you need to know what the conversations look like. You basically reading PCAPs. You need you don't need to, but you'll be able to identify abnormalities and patterns. And that's a good thing. And being able to do all that will help you gather intel from those PCAPs. So when you can identify patterns, that helps you build TTPs for actors. You're able to, search the network a little bit better. You're able to go through your PCAP systems a little bit better. You're able to identify, some of that network activity better when you're doing hunting and whatnot. And it gives you a better, mind frame for when you're looking at maybe malware or you're trying to find actors, being able to build up that network diagram and that network infrastructure. So can't go wrong with understanding and dealing with network analysis. All right, so now that everyone is got a better understanding of what hunters do, some of the skills we have, where we might sit and how we might be utilized, this tool section is for those who might be interested in coming into this field, and or if people want to know what tools their analysts might need. This is a little list I put together. Again, it's based on my experience, not meant to be the you have to have kind of list. So network analysis tools like Wireshark, Network Miner, Threat Miner, Robotex. Some of those are ones you download, some of those are online. Malware analysis tools like PE Studio. It's a lot of information in one spot with that tool. It's a really good tool. PEID, Norbian, Process Explorer, all good malware tools. So some vulnerability analysis tools. These could be things like debuggers, Nmap, Metasploit, things that you find on Kali, Burp Suite, stuff like that. Link analysis tools. Link analysis is an underrated analysis. Analyst Notebook, Palantir, Lucidcharts, Maltego. Those are all some pretty good ones. I think Analyst Notebook and Palantir are probably the best. But Lucidcharts, Maltego, also Visio, those will work too when you don't have the money for the good ones. Some dark web analysis tools can be things such as Tor, Not Evil Search Engine, Digital Shadows, Recorded Future, Tails, Darkfail. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different dark web tools. And what is it? Trace Labs has a good set of tools as well. Not so much dark web, but they have some really good like analysis tools, OSINT tools. Okay, other analysis tools, like I just mentioned, Trace Labs has a whole like package of OSINT tools that are pretty good. I recently did a CTF with them, so they were on my mind. Anyways, there are so many more that I could add, but that would get this more into a training. Nobody came here for a training, so I'm gonna move on. And now that your analyst has all the data, they have the tools, they have everything, we're good to go. What's the method? Like, what do we do next? What are your analysts doing next? What should they be doing next? Well, first you need to make sure that your analysts have a defined area of operation. They need to have a scope. That way, when they're trying to go through the analysis process, it's defined. They're easily to stay out of rabbit holes, or they're not getting too big. Helps them know what data is important and what data is supplemental. The information they might keep, that kind of comes from the scope of the assignment. Tickets are an easy way to know what information to keep. So if you're like using Jira, an analyst can go in there and say, what was needed? Oh yeah, that's needed. So this is what I have to give back, go back and forth. If you're doing like research, the information you keep might be a lot different. And it'll be just information, that pertains to that research. What is important? Is it supplemental to this? Is it actionable? Is it old? So depending on what you're doing will depend on that information that you keep. So where to put that information? It depends. Like I mentioned, if you have Jira, the information might be going into there, and that might be your starting point. If you're an analyst just going like I did and having to look in endpoint systems every morning, I kind of come in with a plan in my mind. Okay, I'm going to go look at low-level alerts. Okay, I just read about this new intrusion. Okay, I just read about this new ransomware. So, where do you start? It is depending on your mission. And then what to do with that information, can also be dependent on that as well. But like I mentioned, you can put information into things like Analyst Notebook, Maltego, Visio. You can put them into things like OneNote, Excel. So it kind of depends on your mission and what you're needing to get back out. All right, so ways that this information can be shared. Well, it can be shared like we're doing now in conferences. It can be shared on instant response teams when things are going down. It can be shared on things like Jira. It can be shared on SharePoint. So it depends on why you're sharing this information and who this information needs to get back out to. Blogs are a good way to give back to the community and put information out there for other analysts. Sometimes the data is being shared through creating rules for endpoint systems. So like after you've done all your research, you might have created a YAR signature, and that's a way it can, all this analysis can be shared. So really, again, goes back to that scope and what your assignment was. So that scope is very important. All right, so cyber intelligence, I'm pretty sure we're all aware, is not new. The data, the analysts, the threats, they've always been there for a long period of time. But it kind of seems like cyber threat intelligence is kind of a buzzword. It kind of feels like threat hunters is a buzzword, threat hunting is a buzzword, and they're just kind of being thrown out there now. And a reason that might be is because before, us little cyber intelligence and us little hunters, we were just in small circles, and we were just sharing the information, between us, and nobody was really interested in, this information. And then things like ransomware started, making it to the main stage. You started hearing about ransomware in the news and local media. Breaches are starting to be talked about more. So things that are happening in the cybersecurity field are starting to get a little bit of light on the main stage. And because of that, now companies and organizations are like, oh, I guess this is an area we should put money into. Oh, I guess this is an area we should be thinking about. And now organizations and companies are trying to be proactive, which is good, right? Proactive, not reactive. And so, yeah, so it's not new. Just no one was really paying attention to this field before, before the ransomware, before the breaches, before, especially COVID. I think COVID's really brought to light some of, these bad intentions. All right, so kind of like I mentioned before, why should a company or organization care about their threat space? Like I mentioned, because the threats aren't new. And it's probably, the same reason you would care about crime rates and, crime moving into a new area. Like you wouldn't just say, put your finger on a map and move there. You're going to do some research about it. You're going to see what the area is like. You're going to try to get to know it better so you don't move in blindly. Well, hopefully you don't move in blindly. Every company, organization, and even people, we don't have the same type of threats. Person can be extorted for one thing and a company extorted for another. Department of Energy is going to have different threats than Bank of America. A power company might have attacks focused on taking down, a grid system, or a hospital, might have attacks targeted on locking up their system and demanding a ransom. Understanding those threats are going to help that organization create a more tailored approach to their cybersecurity needs and, help that company fill in their cyber intelligence gaps. And this is something that antivirus vendors and endpoint systems can't do alone. You need that intelligence to kind of fill that gap there. And hunters do that. A hunter is, the gatherer of intelligence. They are a weapon against past and future threats. All right. So these next couple of slides are getting into, some learning tools that I have used in the past or still use. And this is not sponsored, and it's not, again, an end-all be-all list. There's tons more stuff out there than this list I'm going to provide. This is just a short list in case somebody is trying to get their feet wet. So a YouTuber that I frequent is Malware for Hedgehogs. He's my go-to YouTuber for learning about, reverse engineering things and malware analysis. And yeah, he's really smart. Oh, my mouse is not working. There we go. Some books that I have around are Learn Malware Analysis, Practical Packet Analysis, and Red Team Field Manual. I also have Blue Team Field Manual, which kind of has a lot of stuff the Red Team one has, but a little bit more. Both are good. So these are some websites that I also frequent. The first one is Dieter Stevens. He creates tools and he blogs. Yeah, so it's a good site. You can get tools and blogs, and sometimes he blogs about his tools in case you need to know how to use them. The second one is Women's Society of Cyberjitsu. It's a nonprofit organization, and they aim to help advance women in cybersecurity. I am in this organization, and I sometimes volunteer my time to put on training for them. If it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't be here. They were really welcoming and inclusive and gave training and whatnot during a time like years ago when, women were still kind of being shut out from the space. So I really, lean back on them for, getting me where I am. So definitely if you're a woman coming into cybersecurity, check them out. All right. So we're gonna get into Twitter peoples that I follow that can be a good source of intelligence or learning. Boop. The first person is a malware researcher who often tweets about hitting Cobra and other, cool tidbits. I'm telling y'all, I really like hitting Cobra. They're a lot of fun. Anyways, the second person is also a malware researcher. She tweets about many topics that include malware. The third, oops, I double clicked again. The third person is a really kick-ass person. She's a cyber professional as well. She was my mentor last year at B-Sides. The fourth person is a Twitter account that tweets about cyber intel topics. And this person is a cool she-bat that tweets. I like the name, MZ-bat. It's kind of cool, kind of nerdy. Anyways, the fifth person, or the last person, is the YouTuber that I had mentioned earlier. He tweets about reverse engineering, malware analysis. He retweets a lot of like blogs and stuff that are put out there. I find almost everything that he puts out pretty useful and relevant to our field, my field, this field. All right. And that was the talk. I want to thank everybody for coming, staying here on your Friday, your virtual Friday. Yeah. All right. I think we have time for questions and whatnot. I am checking the questions. Oops, they are moving. They are popping. 1 second. How do you get hands-on experience? So there are always learning opportunities going on. You can, I think Twitter is a really useful place, especially for this field. And that's kind of where I learn about events. But I know the Women's Society of Cyber Jiu-Jitsu that I mentioned, we put on events, we put on training. You can also do things like, I know Over the Wire has like CTFs that are really good. CTFs are a great way to kind of get yourself in that hacker mindset. Some CTFs have reverse engineering and malware analysis involved. So there are some that, have a whole bunch of different aspects and not just penetration testing. So that's a great way to get some hands-on too. And if you go to Malware for Hedgehogs, he puts out, he goes through, malware, like taking it apart and analyzing it. So if you set up a lab, you can also kind of just go through those YouTubes with him as he's doing it. You can also, do it yourself. And I think that was a lot of what got me through my early days is just watching videos and just recreating it. I know some people create stuff and then take apart their own stuff, but yeah. Also, Trace Labs is good for open source stuff like OSINT and whatnot. You can find me on Twitter. It's malware. If you have other questions. Does language play a role in threat hunting? Yes and no. Obviously, if you can understand a language, it'll help you understand maybe that region better. But you don't necessarily need to know a foreign language to be in cyber threat intelligence or in hunting. If you want to sit in incident response and hunt through logs, you definitely don't need a foreign language, but knowing maybe like Python and programming languages is definitely a plus. I would say programming languages are a plus, and then foreign languages are that. If you want to be a researcher in like the hunting cyber threat intelligence area, knowing a foreign language can help you if your area of operation speaks that language, but there are definitely resources out there where not knowing it doesn't hinder it, but it is an advantage if you do know it. All right, I am checking the questions again. All right, I think there is a small delay. Soft skill. being able to, like I mentioned, adapt to situations and admit that you don't know something, and being able to go and learn that something you don't know is definitely a skill to have. Being able to use your resources. So like being able to like reach out to other people who might know something that you don't know is, good. Like I think in this field, sometimes people don't want to ask questions, but asking questions to other people is like very important, and it helps get you out there. And the more sources I want to say you have, the easier things are for you to kind of move around and make more fluid in this field. But definitely the ability to continue to learn, pushing yourself to pick up those things that you don't know is great. Is there a big difference between being in threat intelligence and being a threat hunter? So I want to say they're almost, depending on where you go, they're almost interchangeable, right? A hunter is somebody who is going out and collecting those things, right? You're tracking down the threats, and you can't track down threats if you don't have the intelligence. You have to be able to pivot and go off something, and that something is the, intelligence. It's that threat intelligence. So you might hear people use OSINT, threat intelligence, cyber intelligence, and threat hunting. And sometimes we use those interchangeably. I'm not saying we should, but sometimes we use those interchangeably. But the act of hunting is once you have gathered that intelligence, and then you're putting it into actionable intelligence. So you have to have that intel to do the hunt. So they're kind of going together. Can't have one if you don't have the other. Sorry, looking for. Yes, you don't need a forensics background, but a forensics background can be one of those stepping stones into threat hunting, because when you're doing forensics, you're taking pieces apart, you're putting, you're seeing how things work, how they're all connected to each other, and you're, doing that bigger picture. So definitely, understanding things like that can help you become a threat hunter. And I mean, you're already kind of a threat hunter if you're doing forensics, because you're like, what am I going to go look at? What am I looking for? What would the bad guy do? So when you're going to forensics, you're already kind of in that set. Now you just have to add other pieces to it. And depending on, what your mission is, you might already be considered a hunter. So yeah, hopefully that wasn't confusing. I felt like maybe I made that more confusing. All right. What types of questions should be asking if you're using CTI team as a resource? I'm not sure. It all depends on what you're working with. Your cyber threat intelligence team can tell you about threat actors. They can tell you about malware. They can tell you about trends. They can tell you what's new, what's going on and things. So your cyber threat intelligence team is going to be and should be in the know. And so you can really ask them just anything cyber related. And if they don't know, they'll probably be able to point you in the right direction. So they are a wealth of knowledge. Talk to them. They want to talk to you. Trust me. Once you get a threat intelligence analyst talking, we'll keep going. All right, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for the questions. Find me on Twitter if you have more.